More congressional talk tonight. Am I out of the shot?
The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
So welcome aboard. Great to have you in. Thanks very much for tuning in. We are thankfully having each of the 2nd Congressional District candidates on over the course of this season. It's at least one batch that we were able to identify, bring in, and make sure that we've got everybody on, and that's fun. David Segal will be with us tonight, and he's he's showing signs of life in the poll. It's hard when you've got so many people that are in this race, and he'll talk to us about the viability of his candidacy, at least from his perspective, and all those things in just a moment. So thanks very much for tuning in. Speaking of congressional races, look at this. Liz Cheney, she got just absolutely whacked. But there's no surprise here. Look, she raised $15 million. Can you imagine this? $15 million for her campaign and only spent about $7 million. If you have $7 million in a Rhode Island campaign, you've got the market covered. Wyoming obviously has a geographic wider base, but is a population which is much smaller. Think about it, one congressperson for the entire state of Wyoming. But that's a general election inside a primary. I mean, 70% of the voters are Republican. The Trump candidate wins, and she knew it. I mean, as soon as she voted for impeachment, she knew she was sunk. And then she's doubled down with her co-chairpersonship of the January 6th Commission and has done a job that I think most of America thinks is admirable, at least most of America that wants, I don't know, accountability for the attack on Washington. Weird stuff, man, weird stuff. So she loses, launches a national organization, and is likely going to be a candidate for the presidency. Most likely not going to win, but could formidably make such a bit of noise that if Donald Trump is in it, he doesn't win either. So I think that's what her mission is. In the meantime, Alan Fung, the Republican candidate for Congress, most likely to be the nominee, goes to that state this week, where Kevin McCarthy, the minority leader, is having a, as you can see, campaign donor retreat. At first blush, when WPRI asked about this, it was, oh, he's out there on a fundraising effort. Well, is he there with McCarthy? Oh, yeah, he is. I mean, this is ridiculous. This romance that Alan Fung has with the minority leader is kind of politically necessary. Hiding it as some kind of dalliance is just, I don't know, it's part of an MO that doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, the hiding is not overt, it's just nuisance-based. And it's kind of where Alan Fung has been all along in his career. Just not ready to stand up and absolutely take a stand for the things that he naturally should, which is why I think whoever the Democratic nominee is going to really pick at him to define his stances on things like abortion, if you will, which is still something he's having significant trouble with. We'll get to that over the course of the general election, no doubt. In the meantime, here's the latest from the WPRI polls on the 2nd Congressional District, which just came out this week.
Despite General Treasurer Seth Magaziner being in a dead heat with undecided in the latest 12 News Roger Williams University poll, political analyst and pollster Joe Fleming says with less than 4 weeks to primary day and his closest challenger nearly 30 points behind, Magaziner is in good shape to win the Democratic nomination.
Right now, Seth Magaziner is still sitting very pretty at this point.
But Magaziner hasn't moved the needle much from our last poll. He's gained just 4 percentage points since May. Same with Morgenthau. Segal went up 3%, and the number of undecided voters dropped by 13%.
Older voters, 43% of them are still undecided on that race. You know, that's your high number.
Fleming says Segal does well with younger voters, getting 17% between the ages of 18 and 39.
And he might be targeting that
I
group
would
in terms
assume he
of
probably is trying to get them out the vote. Again, as we know, young people don't tend to vote, especially in primaries. It usually skews towards older voters.
With $1.7 million in his campaign war chest as of June 30th, Magaziner is far and away the best-funded Democratic candidate in the 2nd Congressional District.
So David Segal is here. I don't know. You got to throw some parties, I guess, huh? For the young people.
Well, one, we are throwing some parties. I don't know if I'm allowed to pitch them here. But
Listen, it's carte blanche. You can pitch them anywhere you want.
We have a couple of concert, rally, fundraiser events coming up. People can go to my website. I'll push that davidsegalri.com. I think as of today, but shortly to learn more about them. I think we're having one on the 1st and one on the 6th. But I respect Tim and Joe quite a bit, but we are targeting not just the young voters, we are targeting voters of all ages.
Sure.
And getting good response from them. I will also say.
Well, I think what they're saying is that you've got some data showing viability there. So make the most of what you got, I think was the theme, right?
Yes. But I should also say, and forgive me for not going into the nitty-gritty details, but we have internal polling that has us somewhat better than that. I'm not going to pretend I'm way out in front. But for various reasons, we think that we're doing somewhat better than what that poll shows, though not in first place. One thing that our poll also reflects is that a substantial number of people around, in this case it's tied with where Seth is, are undecided in this race. And there's also a lot of movement between the candidates.
So I got the part that you think you're doing better, that you're not winning, but you're more competitive, and what?
Oh, that as many people as are supporting the person who's first place right now are undecided, per the poll that.
Correct. Yeah. I don't know. It's when you've got 5 candidates trying to break through on those undecideds. I mean, obviously they're going to break amongst the 5 candidates. If there is a preponderance, for one candidate, that would be surprising to me. But you know what? There's a lot of things that are surprising me these days.
It's not going to break.
Do you sit here? Let me get to it on the numbers. Obviously, we want to talk issues, right? We want to talk about why you're in this race and what your background is. I mean, it's not like you've not been elected before. You've been elected twice as both a councilor and a state representative. So you're electably viable. There's no doubt about that.
I'll take it.
But do you sit here as a guy who feels like you're running out the schedule, so to speak? It's kind of like my Giants, my football Giants. It seems like every year it's like we're 4-11, and now we're just playing out the schedule. We're going to play hard. We're going to do it whatever we can to win, but we know what the inevitability of the season is going to be. Give me a candid answer about how you sit here today.
We are still in it to win. We're running a campaign that is operating at a pretty substantial scale. We've called over 100,000 voters so far. I think before this is done, we'll call another 150,000 voters. Call voters 150,000 more times or so. So there's a universe of a certain number of voters who are likely to turn out. Joe was right about that. This is probably going to be a relatively low turnout race, and we're working to engage with them through every mechanism we can. And it's been doors, more than 10,000 door knocks so far, phone calls, more than 100,000 phone calls so far, a series of mailings, a substantial social media buy. We'll figure out if we're going to be able to get on broadcast TV or not, but there are other mechanisms now for reaching voters than there were 10, 20 years ago, and we're making use of all of them. Which
is maybe why you are competing well with the younger demos.
I think, well, it's an interesting question. I don't have a precise answer on why those numbers show the way they do, but everybody, people of all generations now make use of social media, Facebook, etc. And this is part of the wrap on Facebook now, right? Like the younger people are moving towards Instagram and towards TikTok, and older voters are on Facebook. People my age and up, and we're engaging with them there too. So we are running a robust campaign, and we'll see what happens. I think that one thing that is clear is that, and I will move into issues now, is that as people hear about my message and my work, they move in my direction. And so it's a question of getting that message out in a way that's ubiquitous and robust. And my message is one of having stood against what I take to be the main impediments to progress on the issues of the day, which are corporate special interests and political corruption that plagues our system. And it's why we can't make progress on, or only make insufficient progress on, issues like affordability and health care and climate change and access to basic rights and so much more. And a theme that runs throughout my time in and out of office, starting with a run for city council literally 20 years ago this summer, has been taking on those corporate special interests and corrupt structures within our system and trying to push back against them, overcome them, and make progress for everyday people.
All right, so I want to dig into some of those thoughts and your philosophy on that kind of stuff, but while we've been talking numbers, let's finish that part of the conversation. Seth Magaziner out there with 30+% and an equal amount of undecided. How in heaven's name do you either change the minds of people who say they'd vote for him because they recognize him or they believe in him, and the undecided? I mean, what is the practicality of being able to, and how do you get to carving out what is a small number comparative to a majority vote, but a demonstrative lead compared to the rest of the field?
Right. One thing, for instance, is we have yet to have a broadcast debate in this race. We've got 3 of those coming up. Hopefully more are going to be scheduled. But the actual dynamic where there is a dialectic between the candidates in front of all to see is an incredibly powerful thing, makes and breaks candidacies all the time. We have 3 of those coming up. And I think that's going to shape the views of a lot of people on this race.
Are there big disagreements? I don't see them. So there seems to be a democratic philosophy. I think Alan Fung is more challenged with actually defining his philosophy, but the Democrats seem to, with some derivation by personality and by, specific whatever's in the craw, seem to be part of the same think, if you will.
I think that there is a fair amount of agreement, and I think this is informed by a forum we had earlier today, but there's a fair amount of agreement on a number of the issues of the day. There are some differences. Some are of emphasis and some are of, let's say, structural analysis. And so I'm going to repeat what I said before, which is that I'm the person in this race who's got a 20-year record of pushing back against corporate special interests and corruption that define what we can and cannot get done through this political system. And we can talk about that in more detail. There are also some issue differences. As far as I know, I'm the only person in this race who supports Medicare for all. As far as I know, I'm the only person in this race who supports the Green New Deal framework, for instance. And to me, these are incredibly important goals that we should be striving to achieve. We need universal health care. Medicare for all is my preferred way of getting there. We just saw meaningful climate action pass as part of what's now called the Inflation Reduction Act. But it's not going to get us even to the relatively modest goals that the Biden administration set when they came in terms of emissions reduction, let alone to the Green New Deal, Paris Accord aims of what's necessary in order to stave off the most catastrophic effects of climate change, for instance.
All right, so why don't we do this? We'll dig into some of that when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back. David Segal is with us. He is a candidate for Congress. Remember, the primary is September 13th. There are 5 candidates on the, 6 now, on the Democratic side who are vying for that seat. You'll have met all of them by the time we're done with our programs prior to the primary itself. Remind everybody about your elected career first. You were a city councilor, a young one. A state representative. You had 2 terms apiece there. What did you glean from your work at the General Assembly, after the City Council?
I learned, it was an amazing experience. I got involved when I was 22, which was 20 years ago. So I've been doing this work in elected office, out of elected office for half of a lifetime now, which is kind of amazing to consider. First ran for office as part of, there were 2 movements in Providence that I was participating in back in 2001, 2002. One was in service of fairer wages at the city level, passing a living wage ordinance to make sure that workers were making what then was considered a living wage. I think the number was $10 an hour, which was not a living wage even then, certainly is not today. And also in service of policing reforms at the city level. And over the course of my time in office, we were able to make progress on a number of those issues. I also introduced, I think that's safe to say, introduced the impulse to be concerned about environmentalism at the city level, or at least at the city council. So we made Providence what I think was the first capital city in the country with a renewable energy mandate. We did energy efficiency, fuel efficiency programs. A lot of work around workers' rights and so on. And then the other thing that's great about working on a city council is you really get involved in the nitty-gritty of the neighborhood. So I got to help with roads and sidewalks and those kinds of things, design parks, community gardens, help with school infrastructure and all of that. Really gives you a sense of place and a sense of community.
And from the General Assembly?
In General Assembly, I was part of the assembly's changed so much, like even since I was in there.
Right.
And I was part of.
You would have been a player in what has been the progressive movement that has moved in on that General Assembly right now.
Yeah, and my election
You were
was
kind of all by yourself back then.
Not quite, but there were
Sort of.
So we've seen a few different organizations on the outside help with this over the years, and some before my time. And we all shoulders of giants and all of that. But back when I got in, Ocean State Action was doing a lot of organizing to help progressives with assembly runs, and so there were a handful of us. My class was not particularly progressive. I'm not gonna name names, but we did have a progressive caucus in the assembly then, and I co-organized it alongside some folks who are still in there, like Art Handy and Edie Agello, for instance. But it was a very different time, and we had very conservative leadership, at least socially, in the House and the Senate, and then Don Carcieri was the governor. And I talk to some younger folks these days, and they can't even fathom the idea that Rhode Island would ever have a Republican governor. Just totally written it off, and could easily happen again, even this cycle, potentially. But even under that circumstance, we were able to make progress on a bunch of issues. I oversaw passage as the lead sponsor, 3 years in a row, of measures to expand renewable energy generation across the state. So the wind turbines that went up at Fields Point, that was a direct consequence of legislation that I oversaw passage of, and then other wind turbines and solar panels, criminal justice reforms. I was there during the housing crisis when there were extraordinary cuts happening because taxes were down and the federal government did not do what it did during this most recent economic crisis and help cities and states through it. So the state was implementing cuts that were going to affect cities and towns, and we were able to organize a group that did not win on everything, but was able to blunt those cuts.
All right, very good. In terms of resume, what is political corruption?
So operates in a variety of different ways, but I would say that it's when you are focused on something other than stewardship of what is best for your constituents. And different people have different conceptions of exactly what's best for their constituents, but one thing I've worked on a lot.
So you're suggesting that priorities that don't match yours are corrupt? I'm a little concerned that the word corruption, which ought to be a nasty word for everybody, is overused these days.
I think it's used a lot because it's present in a lot of places. So let me give you some specific examples of what I've done. In the lead up to the Biden administration, I helped build a mass movement at the national level, and this is what I've been doing since I left office. I had been professionally, yeah, I'd been running a federal advocacy organization, and we work on what one could say, broadly speaking, anti-corporate power considerations. And one thing that is totally normal in DC, and also normal here to a degree, is that people go into posts in the regulatory agencies, the ones that are supposed to oversee the banks or monopolies, and come from industry, go in, do the bidding of industry, use it as an opportunity to refresh their contacts, to learn more about the inner workings of government, and then go out and make even more money than they made on the way in.
I hear that, and I share your concerns about all this kind of stuff. Here's the conundrum. In order to be able to oversee, regulate, be the chief of, make sure all the bells and whistles of a particular industry or activity are running well, you need to know it. You need to know the business. So how do non-work up through the field or industry types end up overseeing an industry? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I would say that there are a few. I can give you a few specific examples. We have now a person running antitrust at the Department of Justice who comes from the perspective of the smaller companies that are suing the bigger companies over anti-competitive business practices. So he knows the industry, but he knows it from the perspective of the little guy who for too long has been abused by the massive companies that have accrued too much power.
So that's a good hire.
Yeah, it was a good hire because he was on the side of the people for whom his office is supposed to regulate. So it was a good hire because he was working for smaller businesses and the people were impacted by these massive conglomerates that we've allowed to combine over the course of recent decades. And in the past, we've seen people who have taken an opposite tack and gone in and encouraged mergers in the name of efficiency. And we're all dealing with the consequences of that right now. These companies are so big, and that's part of what's driving inflation. I also think that there are people who sometimes people have been in industry and then done other work afterwards to demonstrate that they care about the public interest. And we've got some examples of that. And we also have people who've just studied these industries deeply who I think are doing a good job at agencies like the Federal Trade Commission or the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau right now. And I'd encourage...
So your role in Congress, and we can talk about the balance of power between Democrats and Republicans and all that kind of stuff. That's all kind of, easy red meat for Democratic candidates. It seems to me that what you're saying is you want to go in there and try to replicate what you've done in Providence and both on a state and city level. That you want to get into the inside of the sausage making in Washington. Is that what I'm hearing?
I want to do, so I've always been somebody who's got 1 foot on the inside and also 1 foot in mass organizing, and I want to play that role. I understand the procedure through which laws get made. I understand how to work with people on the inside, even ones who aren't exactly like me. And I also understand how to work with people on the outside to help shape what is possible and push back against the interests I'm describing. You don't like my use of it, but push back against corruption and push back against the corporate special interests.
I'm non-judgmental, more inquisitive over this. A couple more notes and we get back. Stay with us. You know, I don't have to predict where you stand. I've already had a radio conversation with you, David, about the Supreme Court's decision. But this was a bellwether, kind of a rock to the consciousness of America. What's your quick thought on this?
I think what's happened is really scary. I think some people saw it coming. I think people here were, active on it over the course of the last few years.
Meaning Rhode Island.
Rhode Island, yeah. And I get to be, I'm part of that story in the sense that I was co-sponsoring codification of Roe v. Wade back during the dark ages of the mid-aughts when the Assembly was very different than it is right now, and working to guard against restrictions on choice that had a real chance of passing back then. I think I'm very scared about what it portends. We need to take a number of different measures to deal with it, and some of that's legislative. I think
and so let me be clear, should you win a seat in Congress, you will vote for the same kind of codification of the protections of Roe v. Wade, thus running federal law, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's important. 20 seconds of summation. What is it that people want to see in you in this campaign, quickly?
What we were saying before, a 20-year track record of standing up to corporate special interest, political corruption, pushing on the issues of the day, but the only way we are going to make progress on affordability, on Medicare for all, on climate change, and on defending basic rights is if we take on the structures and the forces that are making it so that things are the way they are, so that it's so hard to make progress, and so that we're so frequently on the defensive. And that's what I've been doing for my whole career and what I want to take with me to Congress.
Okay, good luck to you.
Thank you.
David Segal, running for Congress, 2nd District. Primaries at 13th. I'll tell you what's next. We will still hear from Sarah Morgenthau and the alleged leader in this race, State Treasurer Seth Magaziner, over the next couple of weeks as well. Of course, check in on the radio, weekdays 3 to 6 on WPRI. Good luck to David Segal, and we'll talk to you next week. Thanks.